see things and you can't even explain how you know these things, that's more than likely that is God making you aware of something. He's telling you something. And it's strange because you will know it and you will have a vision of it but you just know it. But when it happens, you realize who's giving you that. Because when the very thing you thought, or if you're prophesying and it happens, you're going to know that that's God giving you that. Okay? But be careful, because Satan is sneaky too now. So we're going to talk about him later on. It says, saying, fear not, Abram, I am thy shield and thy exceeding great reward. And Abram said, Lord God, what wilt thou give me, seeing I go childless? And the steward of my house is this Eliezer of Damascus. And Abram said, behold, to me thou hast given no seed, and lo, one born in my house is mine heir. And behold, the word of the Lord came unto him, saying, this shall not be thine heir, but he shall come forth out of thine own bowels. But he that shall come forth out of thine own bowels shall be thine heir. And he brought him forth abroad and said, look now towards heaven, and tell the stars, if thou be able to number them. And he said unto him, so shall thy seed be. And he believed the Lord, and he counted it unto him for righteousness. So this is when Abraham is letting the Lord know that he wants a son. Because Sarah was barren. She had no child. Despite the fact that they obviously tried. Okay, then I wanted to, now we're going to go down to Genesis. We're going to go to Genesis 15. Well, we're in Genesis 15. Let's go down to 13. Okay, and he said unto Abraham, now this is very important. This is a prophecy that he's giving Abraham. And he said unto Abraham, know of a surety. Well, as a matter of fact, wait a minute. Let me just read this whole thing. Okay. No, that's not. I was looking for something. Okay, so we're going to go back down. Okay, I'm going to start with 12. And when the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell upon Abram, and lo, an horror of great darkness fell upon him. And he said unto Abram, know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. And also that nation whom they shall serve will I judge, and afterwards shall they come out with great substance. So he's letting Abraham know that he's going to give him long life. He's going to be an old man, full of years, when it's time for him to come and be with the Lord. But that prophecy that he gave him from that point, we're going to talk about, because that was when the Hebrew Israelites ended up into Egypt, and we're going to show how God drives his people in the direction he wants them to go. And when he says something, it is amazingly accurate. The way that he says it, it happens. It's really amazing. But I mean, he's God. So now we're going to go to Genesis, because I mean, Abraham, after he was told that, 16. Okay, Abraham, once he was told of God that he was going to have a child, and like most of us now, he was not expecting for 10 years to pass. He was expecting maybe a few months, but he wasn't expecting 10 years. And that is a long time when you're already 85 years old. But we're going to understand that people back in those days lived a long time. I'm going to show you scripture where somebody, Methuselah, he lived to be a lot, 969 years. But we're going to finish this up, and then I'm going to get down to show you that. But at this time, Abraham is 85 years old. It says, now, let me put this out the way. Now Sarai, Abraham's wife, bare him no children, and she had an handmaid, an Egyptian, whose name was Hagar. Now see, what happened? A famine came up. Matter of fact, a famine came up, and it drove him into Egypt. And as a result of him going into Egypt, that's how he ended up with that Egyptian maid. Because when the famine, see, God can make a famine so great that it will force you to have to leave your comfort zone or your environment that you're in now. And just like some people who might possibly think that they're content and they're comfortable and that they're set where they live, and then what comes along? Floods, a tornado. God can get you out of your comfort zone if he wants you out. And there's no place on this earth that you can go that if he decides he wants to get you out of that area, that you will not leave, because his elements will come through there, and I tell you, his elements will get you up and moving. I mean, when water start coming in, people start moving out, and stuff like that. I was wanting to find where, and I have it. Goodness. Okay, I'm going to have to come back to that. I was trying to kind of talk and look for something, but anyways, we're going to go ahead and just read here. It says, now Sarah, Abraham's wife, bare him no children, and she had a handmaid, an Egyptian, whose name was Hagar. And Sarai said unto Abraham, behold, now the Lord hath restrained me from bearing, and I pray thee, go unto my maid. Okay, it may be that I may obtain children by her. And Abram hearkened unto the voice, excuse me, of Sarai. Okay. And Sarai, Abraham's wife, took Hagar, her maid, the Egyptian, after Abram had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan, and gave her to her husband Abram to be his what? Wife. To avoid committing adultery, to avoid committing sin, if she wanted him to use her as a surrogate mother, then she had to become his wife as well. And so as you see there, it says to be his wife, so that she could have his child and still be honorable in God's sight. Now here it states that when they got into it says Abraham had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan. See, he thought that when God got him into Canaan, and he let him know he wanted a child, it was going to happen immediately. Sometimes God don't always move according to our schedule. Now you have to understand, he was 85. Let me make sure. Okay, he would have been 85 years old at this time, because he was 75 years old when he left his father's house, and now he'd been there for 10 years, so that would make him 85 years old. And then now we're going to go to Genesis 17. And so you got to remember, you're saying, oh, well, because I'm going to show you where, I'll show you when I get there. I'll keep wanting to put carrot for the horse. Too anxious to get the information out, I guess. Okay. So this is Genesis 17. And this is a really good app. Also, this app here, you can pull this app up at kjvbible.net. If you put in if you type in kjvbible.net, you should be able to pull up this app, and it'll save you a lot of time. And if you have to do anything online or to show somebody, it'll be a lot easier for them to be able to view it through that than trying to show them as I initially tried to show it directly from or on the book, using the book, which to me was more, which would have been better for me, but that's okay. I'm working with this. So we're going to go down to 14. Okay. Okay, we're going to go here. Okay, we're going to go to 15. Okay, well, I got marked 14, so I'm going to go ahead and start with 14. And the uncircumcised man child whose flesh of his foreskin is not circumcised, that soul shall be cut off from among his people. He hath broken my covenant. So parents, understand that to be in God's covenant, and particularly if you're Hebrew Israelite, you have to have your child, your male child, baby, infant, circumcised. That means, and generally the nurse will probably ask you, do you want him, would you like him to be circumcised or not? And that's something that you do want done, and that's the removal of the foreskin around the baby's penis, so that you'll know what circumcision is. That's them cutting away. Generally on a baby, they have more foreskin more skin covering the edge of their penis than what they need, and it swallows the penis. And so they cut away all that extra skin off the penis. I don't know how they know how much to cut off, but obviously, they know, and so that will put you in line with God's covenant. Okay, it says, and God said unto Abraham, because, wait a minute, let me go back, because I want to make sure that you know where he changed their names. We're about to read now where he changed Sarah's name, but he had also changed Abraham's name as well, from Abram. And I just had all this clearly set up, and it's amazing how I am just kind of fumbling all over the place. Okay, so we're going to go to Genesis 17:5. Okay, so that we'll know how God changed their names. Because if I'm jumping, it says, as for me, behold, my covenant is with thee, and thou shalt be a father of many nations. Neither shall thy name any more be called Abram, but thy name shall be Abraham. For a father of many nations have I, there's that faith again, made thee. Past tense. See, God knows it's done. When he speaks it, he knows it's done. It says, for a father of many nations, and it says many nations, not just one nation, because those Israelites, they spread it all over the place now. Have I made thee. So he's speaking it like it's already done, because he's God and it is already done. So we're going to go right back down where we were. That's where Abraham's name became changed, because he would be a father of many nations. And that was Genesis 17:5. Okay, so then we're going to go back down to 14 where we were. We talked about the circumcision. And then it says, and God said unto Abraham, for Sarah thy wife, thou shalt not call her name Sarai, but Sarah shall her name be. And I will bless her, and give thee a son also of her. Yeah, I will bless her, and she shall be a mother of nations. Kings of people shall shall be of her. Now I want you to pay attention to this next verse, because I never heard this in church, and I'm not understanding why I heard that Sarah laughed, but I never heard that Abraham laughed. It says, then Abraham fell upon his face and laughed, and said in his heart, shall a child be born unto him that is 100 years old? See, now, last time we talked, when he first went to Canaan, he was 75. Then he waited 10 more years before Sarah gave him Hagar to bear Ishmael. Now he's 100 years old. It says, shall a child be born unto him that is 100 years old? And shall Sarah that is 99 years old bear? So Abraham, but who wouldn't? Being human, being flesh. He was, when he went to Canaan, he was 75 years old. And 25 years passed, and he still didn't have a baby. And now Ishmael is probably, a teenager now. So he's like, well, most of us would have lost faith at that time, because he's 100 years old. But I'm going to tell you something, they lived to be much older. And we're going to read about Methuselah, who was the oldest recorded man in the Bible. But then it says, and Abraham said unto God, oh, that Ishmael might live before thee. Because Ishmael was a teenager at this time. Then it says, and God said, Sarah, thy wife shall bear thee a son indeed, and thou shalt call his name Isaac. And I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant, and his seed after him. Very important. And I will establish my covenant with him, meaning Isaac, Sarah's son, okay, with him for an everlasting. God gets mad at his Hebrew people, but he always turns around, shows mercy, and brings his brood right back beneath his wings, just like any bird would protect his children. And we're going to find out that that's going to be the case in the Hebrew Israelites' future. And with his seed after him. It is generational, passed down through every seed that is born. If you were born under, Isaac's genetic pool, you are grafted in whether you want to be or not. You are God's people whether you want to be or not. And he's going to give you a choice. You can either be blessed by following me and doing as I require of thee, or you can be cursed. You can go in the other direction, but curses is going to beat you down. So you have a choice. And then it says, he's also going to bless Ishmael as well. It says, and as for Ishmael, I have heard thee. Behold, I have blessed him, and will make him fruitful, and will multiply him exceedingly. 12 princes shall he beget, and I will make him a great nation. So he did bless Ishmael as well. He wasn't, because see, Abraham, you have to understand that Ishmael, they tried to basically do God's work. And how many of us do that? I know I have. Sometimes when I pray, my patience is like not the best. More so terrible. Because, I can wait a month, another month go by, and then after about 3 or 4 months, I'm helping God. As if God really needs my help. As if God really needed Abraham's help. But see, they waited 25 years, and nothing ever happened. And so that's why he's in doubt right now. To say, he laughed. But as we can see, Sarah wasn't the only one that laughed. Abraham laughed too. So when people get to talking about Sarah laughed, you can take them to Genesis 17:17 and tell them Abraham fell on his face and laughed. Okay, so he is just as human as Sarah and any of the rest of us. It's hard waiting. I mean, especially when we know that we're on this time, on this earth a short time. Patience is very difficult. I know it's difficult for me at times. I have to just pray and I have to forget about it. And before I know it, it'll happen. But as long as I'm expecting it, as long as I'm longing for it, as long as I'm desiring it, as long as I'm looking for it to happen, it seems like it never happens. It just seems like it drags on and on and on. And then after a while, I'm all in the way. I'm sitting up here trying to do it myself, and I've forgotten all about that. I was supposed to be getting it from God. I'm making it happen myself. So when you pray, your best bet is just to forget about it. Because if you don't, you're going to be all up in the way, and as long as you're in the way, it's not going to come. Because God is going to receive the glory, not you. Only God. So we have to keep that in mind that as long as you're in the way, you're just going to lengthen it. You're just going to make it longer. So just forget about it. And when God brings it to pass, then you'll know. Then we're going to go, I want to go to and we all know that Sarah laughed, but we also just learned that Abraham laughed too. You know, so we're all human. Okay, so I'm just going to keep it down the line. I'm going to go to Genesis 5 because I want to show you the oldest recorded living man in the Bible. Genesis 5. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. These are the genealogies. I'm just being okay. These are the genealogies, and as I expressed before, I'll let you go through the genealogies. These give you the different ages, though. Some of them will say he begat him, he begat him, he begat him, but this one will tell you how long they've lived. So it tells you this is the book of the generations of Adam in the day in the day that God created man. In the likeness of God made he him. Then it goes down the line, and one thing about when you see the word score stands for 20. Okay, so if you see, let me see for an example. Okay, here's Methuselah. All the days of Methuselah were 969 years, and he died. So he lived 969 years. I mean, we in today's world, we'd be lucky if we even lived 100, let alone 900. But he was the oldest recorded person that is in the Bible to have lived that long. I was trying to look for the word score so that you can have a clear understanding if we ever speak on score. You'll understand how that. Well, maybe it's not. Okay, but sometimes we might read something where it might say that he is 70 days. Well, score stands for 20. So that's 3 times 20. So that'd be like 6 days. That's like 96 days. Scores stand for 20. And I don't see scores on here to try to break that down to you. But just understand that score stands for 20. If it says 3 score, 3, 6, 9, 90. So you know he's 90 years old. Okay. So moving on. Okay, now we're going to go to Genesis 18, because if we Okay, Genesis 18. Okay, now we're going to read about Sarah. Okay, now these angels that came to that stopped by Abram's place, they were on their way to do an assessment on Sodom and Gomorrah. Sodom and Gomorrah wickedness was so that city was so wicked that God just had to deal with it. So I'm going to read, I'll stop here. And he said, I will certainly return unto thee according to the time of life. And lo, Sarah thy wife shall have a son. And Sarah heard it in the tent door which was behind him. Now Abraham and Sarah were old and well stricken in age, and it ceased to be with Sarah after the manner of woman. Therefore Sarah laughed within herself, saying, after I am waxed old, shall I have pleasure, my Lord being old also? And the Lord said unto Abraham, wherefore did Sarah laugh, saying, shall I of a surety bear a child, which I am old? Is nothing too hard for the Lord? At the time appointed, I will return unto thee according to the time of life, and Sarah shall have a son. Then Sarah denied, saying, Then Sarah denied, saying, I laugh not, for she was afraid. Then he said, nay, but thou didst laugh. And the men rose up and looked towards Sodom, and Abraham went to them to bring them on their way. So see, they were going on their way to Sodom and Gomorrah to deal with that wicked city. And you know, they only found Lot and his household, and Lot had to get out because they were going to completely destroy that entire city. They had to actually drag Lot out because I think he wanted to go back for something, and they had to actually pull him out the city. And so you have to understand that God is going to come for his people again. We're going to read that. And when God sends his fishers and hunters after you, your best bet is to not argue but go. If God is gathering his flock, his people, if he's doing a thing, you don't argue with God, you just go. Because see, you have to understand, Lot hesitated. But if Lot hadn't gotten out that city, he would have been consumed with that city. And they told him, we got to get you out of here because we can't do nothing until you are gone. Until we get you out of here, and we got to take care of this. So they had to get him out, because if he would have stayed, he would have been consumed with the city. If they had found at least a certain amount of righteous people, Abraham talked them down, 30, 25, he talked them on down, and they did not even find 5 righteous people in that city. Lot, his wife, his sister, and his 2 daughters. And I believe that they had husbands, but if they stayed, then they became consumed with the city. So when God is telling you to go, just listen and go. Do not argue with God, because because you don't know what God's about to do. So just leave. And he is going to come after his people, and I'm going to show you that in scripture. And then so now we're going to go to where Lot, and this is Lot and Abraham. Actually, this occurred before Lot even went to Sodom. But I want to read this because one thing we have to understand is that the Bible teaches us to seek peace and to ensue peace. And we're going to read that. But this is why Abraham and Lot parted the ways. For peace sake, they had no disagreement with one another. It's just that their people were conflicting because there was just too many of them in the land. So for peace sake, sometimes you have to just leave a person for peace sake. If that's the only way that you're going to obtain peace, you're going to have to get the weeds out your garden so that you can obtain peace and hopefully live a few days longer. Because stress is the silent killer, whether you know that or not. It says, and Lot also, which went with Abram, had flocks, herds, and tents. And the land was not able to bear them, that they might dwell together, for their substance was great, so that they could not dwell together. And there was strife between the herdsmen of Abraham's cattle and the herdsmen of Lot's cattle. And the Canaanites and the Perizzites dwelled then in the land. And Abraham said unto Lot, let there be no strife, I pray thee, between me and thee, and between my herdsmen and thy herdsmen. For we be brethren, brothers, relatives, kinfolk. Is not the whole land before thee? Separate thyself, I pray thee, from me. If thou wilt take the left hand, then I will go to the right. And if thou wilt depart to the right hand, then I will go to the left. And Lot lifted up his eyes and beheld all the plain of Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere, before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. This is before that happened. Even as the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt, as thou comest unto Zorah. So he looked around and he chose the best possible land, which most of us would have. Then Lot chose him all the plains of Jordan. And Lot journeyed east, and they separated themselves, the one from the other. Okay, it says, and Abraham dwelt in the land of Canaan, and Lot dwelled in the cities of the plain, and pitched his tent towards Sodom. But the men of Sodom were wicked and sinners before the Lord exceedingly. Now you know why he had to go and deal with Sodom and Gomorrah. It says, and the Lord said unto Abraham, after that Lot was separated from him, lift up thine eyes, look from the place wherefore thou art, north and south and east and westward. Northward and southward and eastward and westward. Let me not be lazy. Sometimes I rush through things and I want to read it right. I don't want to be rushing through it. For all the land which thou seest, to thee will I give it, and to thy seed for what? Ever. Thy seed forever. So understand that some people may come into that land and occupy that land and think that that's their land, but they'll wonder why there'll never be any peace in that land. See, it's certain things that, because that's a holy land, there are certain things you cannot do in that land. And deceit is one of them. Lying, deceit, tampering, altering, all that type of nonsense. God is beaming. He's looking right down on all of that. And they're not fooling him, not one bit. I mean, and God is going to do what he has to do in the future. And we're going to read about that as well. It says, and I will make thy seed as the dust of the earth, so that if thou can number the dust of the earth, then shall thy seed also be numbered. So he said he's going to really do something wonderful in Abraham's life. But we're going to talk about peace. We're going to look up a few things about peace. Because a lot of times we want to hold on to a situation that's not healthy. But there's going to come times in your life that you're going to have to make tough decisions. And you may as well make it early rather than to wait, procrastinate, and later on you wish you had made them because something tragic happened when it could have been avoided. So if you don't have peace in your life, sometimes you got to separate like Abraham and Lot. You don't hate one another. You don't dislike one another. It's just that sometimes you have to leave people alone for peace sake. If you're doing good to others and you love others and they constantly trying to just stab you in your back and spit in your face after you or helping them and their kids you're trying to do what you can to help them, and they turn around, they don't appreciate it. Sometimes, and they're steadily trying to come at you to make you look bad and to make people hate you. Sometimes you have to just leave these people alone. Don't do what they do. Do not be vengeful or vindictive. Do not go and say, I'm going to do unto them what they've done unto me, or I'm going to get them because they've done this, that, or the other, or any type. Keep revenge out of your vocabulary. God says that He says to give place unto wrath. When people do you wrong, give place. Just leave it alone. Let them do their thing. I mean, if they're doing evil, just get out of harm's way. But do not be what they are, and do not do what they do. It says, if sinners entice thee, consent thou not. That means if somebody try to do you, to get you to do something wrong, don't do it. I remember when I first started my job, and my son was young, and I was a single parent of my son. And I had to do the best I could to provide for him, because he had a deadbeat, really horrible father. I mean, beyond, no one had any positive word to say about that man at all. But when you're in love, you don't see what other people see. But then when I seen him for what he was, there was no chance in this world I would ever let him back in my world. So I became a single parent because that was the better thing for not just myself, but even my son, where I found out he was doing devious, dirty things behind my back when he would have, my son would be with him. He would blow marijuana in his face and give him beer to drink and teach him bad things, you know, and I had to get him out of his life before he sent my son down a destructive path, you know, at which was the better, it turned out better that he was just raised by myself. Well, here I finally, well, not finally, but God blessed me with a job where I could sustain myself and my son. Then I had a particular sibling that actually had the nerve to come up to me and tell me that they were going to come up on my job and they wanted me to help them set the company up so that they could sue the company. Well, my response to that particular sibling, if you come up on my job, I am calling the police. And that sibling never appeared on my job, not even once. But it goes to show you how whenever God blesses you, there's always somebody that'll come along out of absolutely nowhere and try to knock you off of your horse and try to get you to do devious, dirty things because, you know, they're envious or jealous, or and that was civil rivalry that I went through as well. So I understand where Joseph is. I understand clearly where Joseph is. And just like Lot and Abraham, I parted the ways, left them alone. They did a lot of dirty things, ornery things. I let it go, because it tells you, avenge not yourself, but give place unto wrath. For vengeance is the Lord's, He shall repay. So God will deal with them. And I mean, and then when they can't get at you, they'll come after your kids. Your own flesh and blood people will come after your kids to try to destroy them. And one of my kids learned the hard way that the things I told him, they actually did. And because he didn't listen, he got punished. He felt the aftermath. I don't have to tell him now, but now, you know, they've already done their dirt. But to show you just how good God is, God will let you see your desires upon your enemies, or He will avenge your enemy. You don't have to do nothing. Just leave it alone. Let it go. And out of nowhere, you'll see where God dealt with them. So, like I told them, sometimes you have to leave people alone. I don't care whether they're relatives or not. An enemy is an enemy. So don't say, oh, well, that's a relative. Sometimes they are the worstest. It tells you that your enemies will be, your foe will be the enemies of your own household. Now, that was a tough pill for me to swallow at first, because I couldn't imagine that. But when outsiders kept coming to me, telling me stuff, and people who didn't even know one another. I mean, these were people that didn't even know one another that were telling me the exact same stories. So after a while, I began to see or believe that, yeah, what they were telling me were true. So I had to learn some things, I had to learn some things the hard way, and even getting far away from them, they will come after your children. So understand that when you have people, whether they friends, relatives, or whatever, co-workers, whatever, if they're not for your better interest, just leave them alone. You don't have to be vengeful or vindictive. Do not do that. Because understand, reaping whatsoever we sow is universal. Let God deal with them. He can do a far greater job than you could ever even imagine. He can make it where you'll never have to see your enemies again. He'll put them 6 deep. You'll never have to look at these enemies again. Because if they live evil, if they're evil, it's just a matter of time before God is going to deal with them. You don't have to do nothing. And these evil people that are constantly coming at you, He'll remove them out of your way and you'll never have to see them again. So don't avenge yourself. Just leave them alone. Just keep your distance far from them. This here, Psalms 34:14 says, depart from evil. Don't avenge yourself. Because if you go out doing wrong to your enemies who did you wrong, now you have to reap what you have sown. Why? Because you purposely did it. You intentionally sinned. You intentionally knew what you were doing when you went against that person to do them wrong. Now, a just person, they're just going to leave people alone because they're not going to become what they are. If you're surrounded by snakes, get away from them. Don't become a snake. Just get away from them. God will deal with them. And I tell you, God will deal with them. So just leave them alone. But it tells you here, depart from evil. Don't do evil, but do what? Good. Just do good. If you see your enemies, and I'm going to tell you how God gave me a Jonah effect. And this is how I know I don't control myself, but I'm going to try to be real brief about this. I dated a guy that I really thought was a decent person, and he turned out not to be decent because people put on airs. They put on fronts. They lied. They deceived. They would do anything. This is just the evilness of people. When you first meet a person, they're putting on their best personas, their best fronts. Okay? Because they're trying to gain your trust. Okay? So they're going to put on their best front. Some of these people are married. Some of these people have women in their lives. They will lie and tell you anything. I mean, one man knew that I was strictly marriage material. He lied and all kinds of stuff. Even his family, his mother, his daughter, they were all habitual lying snakes. I am so glad I never have to see any of those people again. But God will deal with them. So you don't have to worry about people like that. Whatever you do, and then the Jonah effect, I dated a guy and he was no good, and I got off work, and he was a co-worker, and his vehicle had stalled and he had his hood up, and while I was sitting in my car and I noticed he was across the lot, I started my car up with every intention of just leaving. I'm thinking to myself, he's a no good something. I'm just leaving. Because normally I would always go over and try to assist. Well, that day I was going in the opposite direction. I was going home. So God's Spirit came upon me and told me to go and help him. And my response was, I don't think so. And he just kept repeating, go help him. And we had an argument. Me and God's Spirit was heads up that day, arguing. I mean, we were really, the more he told me to go help him, the more I was like, this is not going to happen. I don't think so. I'm going home, blah, blah, blah. My flesh was so rose up that day. And so as I turned that wheel to go left, to leave that lot, to go home, I promise you, and it was not me, that wheel turned right. That car drove directly over to where that man was, and I found myself getting up out of that car, going over there asking that man, can I help you? And I promise you, it was not me. But what God was showing me when he took over, because I was being stubborn, I was a Jonah, but I wasn't as bad as Jonah. It took him 3 days and 3 nights before he prayed, but God took me and made me do what I refused to do. And I helped him. I had cables and he needed a jump, and I gave him a jump and got his car started. And in the midst of that, all of his friends showed up in a group, and they lifted me up and was saying how good of a person you are, and you are just really nice, and da 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 da. And they talked bad about and against him. So God turned those tables around, and then shortly thereafter he ended up getting terminated from the job. So when people do you wrong and God tells you to just do them right anyway, just go on and follow what God's lead, because God, you don't know what God is doing up the road. You don't know what God is setting up the road to turn the tables around to his demise and not mine. And so I was praised and lifted up, and he was belittled and put down, and then ended up getting fired not much longer after that. And so I never had to see him again. And he tried to even have the audacity to try to plead his way back. No, we can be friends, but no, you can't come back in my life. I don't think so. You only get one time to break or hurt me. That's it. So that's my take on that. But it just goes to show you that God will deal with them. And as far as me not doing God's will, I'm wiser now. I know that I don't control me. So when God tells me to go ahead and do something, or that he leads me to do something, I just follow his flow. And my life is going much smoother. I'm making twice the salary retired than I was making when I was working on my first job. I'm making twice that salary. So it goes to show you that God will even lift you up even greater than you were in the first place. So anyways, moving on. Depart from evil and do good. Just remember, do good. If you have to bite your tongue, bite it. You know, not literally bite it, but shut your mouth. Just don't say nothing. You can't get in trouble if you don't talk. Just keep your mouth shut and let God work it out. And then it says clearly to seek peace and pursue it. So seeking it is like you lose some money. You're trying to find that money. That's how you need to be trying to find peace. And to pursue it is to chase it, to hunt it, to look for it, to diligently search for it, is to pursue it. You're pursuing it. So he wants you to seek peace, to look for peace, and to pursue it, to hunt it down. So whatever is in your life that's interrupting your peace, you need to get rid of it. Sometimes you even have to put that tough love in on your own kids when they want to come in your house, or they want to be in your house and they're trying to run your house as if they pay the bills. No, you know what? It's time for you to get your own place, and that way you can do your own thing, and you can pay your own bills in your own place. If you have a problem following the rules in my home, or the home that God blessed you with. So that's just a little something. I'm full of stories, and I don't mean to tell you stories, but it just kind of goes there. So now we're going to look up. So we want peace is something we want to seek, and we want to pursue it. We want to do more than just seek it. We want to pursue it. Now we're going to go to Psalms. I'm just abbreviating this because it just saves me a little time if I can find my place again. Okay. So just understand, when people mistreat you, God's got you. There is the eyes of the Lord are in every place, beholding the evil and the good. There isn't anything that a person is not doing to you that God does not see, and he does not know, and he will not, that he will deal with if you would just put your trust and confidence in him. It says, mark the perfect man, that's like a righteous man, and behold the upright, those who are righteous. Or righteous means following that which is right. It don't make him perfect. It doesn't mean he's above being a man, but he's following what's right. He won't follow wrong. If a con man were to try to con anybody, it would be somebody that's greedy. But he wouldn't go to an honest man to con him, because he knows an honest man isn't going to do anything that's dishonest. An honest man isn't going to buy nothing off the street, because 9 times out of 10 you don't have a receipt for it, and it's probably stolen. And an honest man isn't going to want to have any part of that. Now a greedy man, oh yeah, you giving it to me for half price, yeah, I take it. See, a greedy person you can get over on pretty much every time. You know, I heard a story once. A relative was, or I heard of a relative, this person had just gotten paid their paycheck, and on the street they met a con, and the con showed this relative a wad of money, a lot of money, and said, I'll trade you, and it was hundreds, you know, a whole lot of hundreds. And he said, I'll trade you this for your check, where her check was probably about $200-300 or something like that, maybe $5 or something, and he's got a wad of just hundreds. So he put his hand back in his pocket. Obviously he had 2 rolls, but he put his hand back in his pocket, and she said, yeah, I'll give you my money for that. So she gave him her 4 or 5 or whatever the amount was, and so he gave her that wad. So she took it all happy and leaving, and when she got kind of away, she looked at it, it wasn't nothing but a roll of ones. He had switched those $100 bill rolls that she saw with the ones. But my question is, as soon as he gave you the money, why didn't you check it then? I mean, why would you leave and check it? If somebody had gave me some money, put some money in my hand, I would have checked it right then and there to see if it was actually what I seen initially. And I would have told him before he, number one, okay, and I wouldn't have dealt with it, I wouldn't have fooled with it, but if I would have fooled with it, he would